Well, this one is going to be a good time. I have talked about this concept ad nauseum in the past over and over again. It's usually a big topic in the off season. I've had debates about it on Twitter, but I've never done a show about this. See the background? Yeah. Tonight, I'm going to tell you who I believe belongs on the Seahawks Mount Rushmore. And man, this was tough. Can't wait to get your feedback. Can't wait for you to find out the decisions I made. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Dan. This is Seahawks Forever, a little show that I do almost daily. Happy Memorial Day weekend. Be taking the next couple of days off, as most of you will be as well, which is why I thought it was the perfect time to do a show like this, because this is one that is not time sensitive. You can sit on it for a couple of days if you want to, and just enjoy it. And then if you don't have time to get to it all right now, right? You're scurrying around the house, whatever. Now that you know what the show's about, you'll want to dig into it and sit with it and engage and debate and give me your feedback. Set it aside for a little bit if you have to. Go play at the pool, go hang out with your kids, cook some dogs and burgers, and give it its due when you're ready. Big announcement that I want to share with you at the moment. My Patreon is now set up and ready to roll, or at least it will be after the show is done. So I've been sitting on this for quite a while, and it just needed to spend some time with it and decide how I wanted to approach it. Here's what you're going to get over at the Patreon. The link is down below. It'll take you there. If you don't like the ads, right? And I apologize for the ads. Well, I shouldn't apologize because it's how I make a living. I am a full-time independent content creator. It's a necessary evil. But I understand how it can be annoying sometimes, because it used to be for me when I would watch YouTube. And as YouTube has become a much bigger part of all of our lives, as we use it mostly now instead of cable television or even streaming services, because you can get just about anything you want on YouTube. It's basically episodic content, right? The ads would annoy me. And then I discovered YouTube Premium, and I'm telling you, if you haven't done it yet, it's the best $14 a month you'll ever spend. You can watch anything you want on YouTube ad-free. However, Patreon will also allow you to do that too. So all the content that I upload there, and I will put every single video that I have on the YouTube page here will show up there. Every single audio feed of each episode. It's one-stop shopping. Everything will be there, ad-free. There's a cost. There's different tiers of memberships, and with each higher tier, you will get more benefits. There's some live chat that we can all kind of hang out together. But it also allows me more, a wider depth of options that I'm allowed to bring you. YouTube has gotten tougher and tougher to use certain content, in particular some All-22 stuff from the college ranks. And although I haven't had a lot of trouble with the NFL Pro All-22 that I subscribe to, it wouldn't surprise me if occasionally there were some issues with that as well. Not an issue on Patreon. Okay, so I'll be able to get back into doing film breakdowns. If you wonder where those have been, well, I just, it's tough to spend a couple of hours building one of those shows only to have it get struck down, right? Or demonetized or taken down completely or blocked. I'll be able to do those things on Patreon, as well as I've got some fun ideas about some other bonus content too. So check that out. All the other ways that you can support the show are linked down below as well, either through direct donations with ZELLE or Cash App, or by buying me a coffee or a beer, or you can do a super chat, super thanks. But the best way to support the channel, really, honestly, I mean this, and it's completely free, subscribe. I want to show you something. Last 28 days, this is straight from my analytics. More than half of the watch time on my channel comes from people that aren't subscribed. It costs $0 for you to subscribe. You don't get spammed. You don't get notified. You have to hit the bell for that. If you want notifications whenever I post new things, hit the bell for sure. But all that happens if you subscribe, two things. One benefits you, one benefits me. Your benefit is when you log into YouTube and it shows all your recommendations and it suggests things to you based on your preferences, it's just going to suggest my videos or the latest one. You won't miss it. How it benefits me is it lets YouTube know that more people like my content. And then the algorithm then takes that and it becomes more aggressive, pushing my content out to other people who have never seen it before. That's how that works. Thank you for bearing with me on that. Well, it's too late to tell you now. I should have told you before, but I will, and I'll start doing this more often because I know I can get off on tangents or tangents as they've been called. But I'll put the timestamp down in a pinned comment if you want to skip past all this. One other thing I'm going to do on Patreon. And this was a suggestion from one of you. I can't remember who. I'm sorry. I wish I could. I like to give credit when it's due. But I'm going to bring back the Dan's Dandy. It's been sitting in mothballs for 30 years. What's the Dan's Dandy, Dan? Well, back in my television days, both in the Tri-Cities and Bismarck, North Dakota, back in those days, if you remember, it was a big deal on ESPN SportsCenter to finish every SportsCenter with a play of the day. And that was my version of the play of the day. And I did it every day. And it was a big deal. It was something I was known for in both markets. I recently went down memory lane and kind of watched some of that old footage. And so during the season, I'll be able to do that. I'll pick a play from each game that I think is a play of the game. And I'll be able to do that there. And that'll be a lot of fun too. Okay, let's get into this. Mount Rushmore, okay? Very, very difficult. And I know there's going to be some strong opinions, as there were for my 53-man roster projection yesterday. If you haven't had a chance to catch up to that one yet, definitely do, because it's really sparked some cool conversation. These are tough. These are really, really tough. But I will say right off the top, obviously, I'm older than some of you might be. And I've been there from day one. I've been going to Seahawks games since 1976. My family had season tickets 76 through 82. Then my dad stopped getting them, and then he got them again in 84. We've had them ever since, and I've taken over those tickets long ago. And so I have a little bit more of an intimate memory and experience with all of these players. Historical significance plays a part. Longevity plays a part. Loyalty to the team or team loyalty to them plays a part. Statistical milestones plays a part. Influence plays a part. And it's tough. It especially was difficult when we got into the Legion of Boom era because there's so many great players. But when you're talking about Mount Rushmore, you're talking about the greatest. And so I tried to keep that in mind. And I will give you, for my 4, all of my rationalizations and reasons. But then, little bonus content for you. I'm going to give you some, well, let's call it a B team, because that's how tough this is. And I know some of the guys that you're going to want on this Mount Rushmore, especially some of you younger fans, you might be a little frustrated or irritated with me, but wait, I'm going to give you my B team and just kind of show you some other combinations to let you know just how challenging this was. All right, we start at the top. And to me, this is a no-brainer. Any Mount Rushmore of Seahawk players that I see that doesn't include Steve Largent, in my opinion, is immediately rendered irrelevant. Steve Largent was a dominant player and did it over a long period of time. Spent his entire 14-year career with the Seahawks. 819 receptions, 13,000 yards, 100 touchdowns. At the time that he caught that 100th touchdown in the back of the end zone at Cincinnati, I believe, straight from memory, had to tiptoe, get both his feet in, something he was phenomenal at. He was the first one to achieve that milestone. When he retired, he held the following all-time records for wide receivers or for any offensive player. Most catches in history, most yards in history, and then, of course, most touchdowns in history. He held all those records when he was retired. That's insane. of course, he also had the consecutive games with a catch streak, which was a huge storyline later in his career of 177. All of those records were later broken by Jerry Rice. And in fact, Jerry Rice went to 274 with the consecutive games catches. And his legacy lives on today with the Seahawks, with the Steve Largent Award, which is originally won by him. He won the first one. They named it after him, selecting a player every year that embodies the qualities of spirit, dedication, and integrity. Just in my opinion, and there's a reason, if you're watching on YouTube, if you can see it, that I have him tattooed on my forearm, greatest player in Seahawk history, hands down, in my opinion. But it's not by a wide margin. Not in the least. Because this guy, if some of you want to come to me and make an argument that he belongs, first on this list, and I didn't intend to really rank these. This isn't really 1 through 4 for me. It's just that, in my opinion, Largent comes first, and then the rest are all kind of right there with him. But if you want to make an argument that Walter Jones would be the first on the list, I can buy that. One of the most dominant offensive linemen in the history of the NFL. And that's a position that is not barren. There's the Hall of Fame is chock full of great left tackles. Again, another guy played his entire 13-year career in Seattle with the Seahawks. A phenomenal athlete, 6'5", 305 pounds, ran a 5 40 when he did his testing. 9-time Pro Bowler, 4-time first team All-Pro. He was a member of the NFL's 2000s All-Decade team, and he was also a member of the Pro Football Writers Association 100th Anniversary's All-Time team. He is in the argument. You can make a case that he was the best left tackle in NFL history. Some people say Anthony Munoz. Some people, there's some other guys that are in the conversation for sure. But if you have a conversation about the best left tackles of all time in the NFL and you leave Walter Jones out of that conversation, again, similar to what I said about Largent not being on a Mount Rushmore, invalidates the argument, in my opinion. These two, hands down, belong on every single Mount Rushmore. I don't care if you're 15 years old and you've only been watching the Seahawks for 3 years. These two are no doubt no-brainers, in my opinion. There's no debate. Now, after this, it gets really muddy. You can make a case for, as you'll see when I show you my backups, 5, 6, 7, 8 players or coaches for these last 2 spots. Speaking of coaches, in my opinion, there's no question that Pete Carroll belongs on the Mount Rushmore. The impact he had on the organization, on the fan base, on the community, you can make a very strong argument that what the Seahawks are today has more to do with Pete Carroll than it does with anyone else who came along before him. All-time winningest coach, obviously, in Seahawk history, 137, 89, and 1. Brought us the Super Bowl, took us to back-to-back Super Bowls, but brought us our 1 Lombardi. And it was an incredible turnaround. Took a team that was almost bottom of the barrel and won a Super Bowl championship in 3 years. Helped build one of the most dominating, if not the best defense we have ever seen in this league. Completely throttled a record-breaking, historically significant offense when they blew out the Denver Broncos in Super Bowl 48. But furthermore, he completely reset the culture and changed the perception nationally, worldwide even, about who the Seahawks are, how they play, the kind of people that they are, the organization. There are still people that are in that VMAC building that, Pete brought on originally. And that's part of his legacy too. Like, as much as he had an eye for talent and obviously an eye for men and coaching players up, getting the best out of them as players and people, but he also saw something in John Schneider. He is responsible. It was his decision to hire John Schneider as general manager. And here we are, even after Pete's moved on, and now, as he gets set to start his first season in Las Vegas with the Raiders, and John Schneider still going strong in Seattle. Just a complete difference maker. And I would argue, as much as anyone in the organization's history, helped shape, again, I'll use that word, the reputation and perception of what the Seahawks are. Now, number 4, this one, I was going to say you can make the argument. I get it. This is one that I think some of the younger generation, there's a couple other names would put in here. But I think it's just because they don't understand how good Cortez Kennedy was. Rest in peace, Big Tez. Another player who played his entire career with the Seahawks from 1990 to 2000. 8-time Pro Bowler, 3-time first-team All-Pro. He was on the 1990s All-Decade team, 668 tackles, 58 sacks. He was an explosive interior defensive lineman. That low center of gravity, he just, he was short, he was squatty, had just that big backside and those big quads, but he could dunk a basketball, ran a sub 5-second 40. But the most impressive thing about Cortez Kennedy is he won 1992 Defensive Player of the Year. That's a huge part of why he's on this Mount Rushmore, but it's also the context within which he won that award. This is how crazy it is that he won that award in 1992. He was on a team that finished 2-14. It's the reason they got a chance to draft Rick Meyer, number 2 overall. You can thank him for that. If they had just lost one more, they would have got Drew Bledsoe instead, and who knows how that would have worked out. So it was a bad team, right? But that doesn't even begin to tell the story. It was literally one of the worst offenses in the history of the league. They averaged 8.8 points a game. Look it up. I am not making this up. They averaged less than 9 points a game. They only scored 17 twice. And those were both losses. In their 2 wins, they averaged 13 points. Cortez Kennedy dominated at a level that convinced the rest of the league, the voters, to vote him as Defensive Player of the Year in the NFL on a team that was that bad. I don't think that would ever happen today. I don't. And that's why, his entire career with the Seahawks, dominant player on a bad team, but he did it over the course of his 10-year career as well. Never got to play in the playoffs. Unfortunately, real bummer there for Cortez. So that's my Mount Rushmore. Now, I acknowledge, and I mention that those last couple spots, some of you might feel differently. And that it was really hard to leave some of these guys off of here. If I could take a chisel myself and build 4 or 5 more spots and expand Mount Rushmore, this would be a lot easier conversation, right? But for that reason, I think it's more fun to talk about it in these terms rather than to just do 10 best Seahawks. Here are some guys that just missed the cut. It was hard not to put Bobby on there. It was really, really hard. Just what a storied career. I didn't write these stats down. What do you make? 7-time first team All-Pro. Unbelievable player, still doing it in his mid-30s. Just unfortunately for other teams. One of the greatest people you'll ever meet. Got the opportunity to wait on him one night. And one of the greatest experiences in my hospitality career. Just a tremendous person whose reputation precedes him, and he always exceeds what you expect from him. Kenny Easley, one of the most talented safeties ever to play in the NFL. Unfortunately, the kidney issues, physical problems, his career was cut short. He just didn't play that long. If he played 10 years, he wouldn't have waited as long to get in the Hall of Fame as he did, and he probably would be on the Mount Rushmore and not number 2 on the depth chart. Just a phenomenal hybrid. Talked to Paul Moyer, his ex-teammate, on the show about him. And he was one of those guys that he was like, if you took Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas and fused them together in a lab, because he was such a dynamic athlete and he was able to cover as a free safety. You'd think he's a strong safety the way he hit people, but then that was the other part of it too. He's big, long, rangy, and he could hit like Cam, but he could cover like Earl. He was a phenomenal player. Just unfortunately, the health issues prevented him from being able to play much longer in his career. I got to put Richard on my second team. It just dawned on me that some of you might be tuning in partway through this, or maybe not paying attention and thinking this is my first Mount Rushmore, but you probably wouldn't bat an eye, really. The thing about Richard is it wasn't just that through much of his career in Seattle that he was arguably the best corner in the league. And I know there were other guys, and they famously went back and forth, and Darrelle Revis and some others, Jalen Ramsey later in his career. But he kind of reshaped the cornerback position. It's kind of leveled off now, but for a while there, he had every other team in the league looking for long corners, tall, long corners, where before he came along, and there were other tall corners before him, but he was really the one that sort of broke the mold, where teams thought that, no, the change of direction isn't going to be there. We need a guy that's quicker. Richard changed all that. Like he showed how the length can help you in press coverage. And obviously when combined with the ball skills and how much production that allowed him to achieve. And just his play style and demeanor, I think really helped shape the personality of the LOB. It was a huge, huge part of it. Some of it, was tough because it got kind of volatile. He was kind of a live wire, obviously, but no doubt, great player. And then you got to put the MVP on there, Shawn Alexander. The thing about Shawn, and the reason that he's not in the running to be on the Mount Rushmore is his career was a bell curve. And when he burned bright, he was on fire. 2,000 yards, tons of touchdowns, had the MVP year, but then it was over before we knew it. And he started to break down physically, and once he got injured, it just kind of sapped. He just didn't have the juice after that. And then, played for a couple other organizations after that. So those are the guys that just kind of were in consideration but didn't make the cut. But it goes beyond that too. Like there are some other guys that I know that I'm going to hear in the comments, and you could look at it a bunch of different ways. Like what if we went all offense, all defense, right? If you went with an all offense Mount Rushmore, you could say, okay, well then Russ could sneak in there with Shawn and Walter and Steve Largent. Or if you don't think, Russ is deserving, maybe Hutch. It's just that he only played the 4 years, right? But he was a dominant player, probably the best at his position at that time. Went on to be a Hall of Famer. In fact, he's wearing the gold jacket in the little clip I have there. I mean, you can do all sorts of things and play around with these, but this is my Mount Rushmore. Largent, Jones, Carroll, Tez. That's it. That's it for me. I don't know where else to go with it. It was fun to put it together. And I think once you start digging into some of the tangible facts and the resumes of these players, I think there's a pretty strong argument that my Mount Rushmore is the right one. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Memorial Day. I really, really do. Thank you so much for all the support. This is so much fun. I'm going to enjoy the next couple days off together. I think we're going to go on a little road trip, see some family. And then I'll be back on Tuesday and daily content throughout the rest of the month. And then we get into June. I've got some really cool guests lined up. We talk about how subjects are a little bit harder to come by in June outside of mandatory minicamp, which will be fun. But that's when I like to interview people and pick people's brains. And so I've got some really, really cool guests lined up, not the least of which will be Greg Bell's going to be joining me on the show again right after mandatory full minicamp to get his thoughts on what he sees on the ground from that full group when we finally get them together. And then training camp's going to be here before we know it, you guys. It's going to be here quick. And of course, we all can't wait for that. That's going to do it for me. Again, subscribe to the show. Don't be one of those that watches and doesn't subscribe. It helps you, it helps me, and it doesn't cost you a penny. I'll appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Seahawks Forever. In the meantime, if you want notifications, hit that bell. Forever and always, go Hawks. Thanks, you guys.